Have you been wondering what's better, to book a shore excursion with a cruise line or to book on your own? We're going to go through what you need to know before your cruise, including how to avoid big potential mistakes. Hi there, I'm Ilana from the website lifewellcruise.com. Welcome back to my channel. Now, if you're going on a cruise, chances are you are looking into your shore excursions. You're doing some planning. That is a lot of fun, but you are probably wondering if it is worth it for you to book with a cruise line, or should you go off and do it on your own? And if you do that, how do you even go about it? So I'm going to go through all of that information in this video, including some potential pitfalls, things to avoid. So we will go through that as well. And I'm going to take you through what I do when I actually book my own excursions. Now, in my case, what I do is sometimes I book excursions with a cruise line. I do think there are benefits to do that in some cases. I'll tell you when. And as well, I book excursions on my own, and sometimes I even go it on my own completely, tour on my own. So I'll tell you how I make those decisions, what to do, and you can do that too. Now, before I get started, I did want to mention that if you like this video, if you find it helpful, informative, or enjoyable in any way, then please do give this video a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And of course, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. All right, let's get started. So before you even make a decision as to whether or not you're going to book with a cruise line, or you're going to go off on your own, or you're going to book with a private vendor, the first thing that you're going to want to do is to actually research your cruise port. Now, it is not as complicated as it sounds, because I have an easy tip for you. And that is to simply go on the cruise line website and to look at the shore excursions that they offer. As well, they're going to give you a bit of a port overview. So they're going to tell you the few most popular excursions or things to see, the tourist attractions. That's going to give you a good guide, a good overview to start with. After that, you can look at the excursions. If you're in a Caribbean cruise port, you might have a lot of beaches or a lot of excursions that have to do with water. If you're in a European cruise port, you'll probably have a lot of sightseeing type of excursions, maybe some different options with food included, that kind of thing. So definitely take a look at what is available and see what piques your interest. Now, likely you're going to see some prices, and at least it's going to give you a good idea. Now, also in the description of the cruise line excursion, it is going to tell you how strenuous or how active that excursion is. And that also is good information to know. Now, I am going to tell you what to do if you want to book with a private vendor. There are definitely cases where this can be something really good, but I'm also going to give you some tips, some questions to ask, and some things to avoid, because I have to tell you, I had a problem a few years ago on a private excursion, and I definitely want to let you know so that you don't have that same thing. So now that you've looked at the cruise line website, you have a good overview of the cruise port and of the different excursions that they offer. Then take a look. Continue your research, especially if you are thinking about going with a private vendor. So what I usually do is I go over to cruisecritic.com. I read the reviews because they're written by real people. I really like to get those details. And at the same time, I'll take a look in the forums of the cruise ports themselves. You do have to register, I believe, to see certain parts of the website. So consider doing that, where you can actually ask questions, and you could even search for the questions and answers as well. Now, of course, you can also Google. So just Google the cruise port and you will find lists of things to do. You can also look at blogs where you'll find real reviews of destinations and excursions that people have done. I know when I go on an excursion, oftentimes on my website, lifewellcruise.com, I do include a detailed review with the pricing, with some of the food, with the drinks, with the different information, those things, the facilities. And I think a lot of other vloggers and bloggers do that too. So that's really handy. And of course, you can take a look on YouTube. Many vloggers, or even people that are just doing regular cruise vacations, will actually vlog their cruise and what they did in their cruise port and their excursion. They'll oftentimes mention the tour company that they've dealt with. You'll be able to see firsthand how things went, and that is a really good way to find out what tour company to deal with. And actually, I did that on a recent cruise, before the shutdown. I did this in St. Lucia. I had found some really good reviews of the tour company that we ended up using. If you are interested, do take a look in the description. I'll leave that video all about St. Lucia and, our mix of the different cruise ports that we did. And then I included the information whenever we did use a private vendor. And that is helpful. If you like the way that tour went, then you might want to contact them as well. Now, another place that you can find vendors and other excursions is on TripAdvisor. That is a very good place. And also Google. But I have a little suggestion. Go on to page 2 and 3, because unfortunately on Google, page 1 is usually those bigger websites. There's nothing wrong with that, but you might just get those lists of things to do. Whereas when you go to page 2 and page 3, you'll actually find vendors that have their companies there. And then you can even move backwards and you can do a search for that on TripAdvisor as well. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of booking with a cruise line or a private excursion. So the pro of booking with a cruise line is that it is easier generally to plan. You'll be able to meet up usually on the ship or right at the cruise port. That does make it a little bit easier. As well, if you have questions while you're on the cruise ship, you can go over to the shore excursion desk and you can ask those questions. Now, another pro is that if that excursion is late, well, the cruise ship will actually wait for you as long as you're on a cruise line excursion, which is probably one of the biggest reasons when people do book with the cruise line that they do. And the cruise line is also using reputable vendors that are also insured. So that's definitely a plus as well. So what are the pros to private excursions? Well, oftentimes those private excursions are going to have smaller groups. That, in my opinion, is one of the best things. Rather than being on an excursion where you might have 30 to 50 people on a coach tour bus, you might have 12 to 15 people in a van. So that smaller group is oftentimes a really good reason to book a private excursion. At the same time, oftentimes it is a money saver. Now, if you're thinking of booking with a private vendor, these are some questions to ask and some things that you are going to want to consider. So firstly, you're going to want to know, is the excursion or the attraction very far from port, and how long is your ship at the cruise port? Personally, if the attraction is very far from the port, or if it requires taking a train or a ferry over, most of the time I will simply book with the cruise line. Now, you also want to know, is it sometimes easy to do it on your own? In some cases, if you're in the Caribbean, it is as easy as taking a cab over to a local beach. Or if you are in Europe at one of the different cruise ports, sometimes you can take a hop-on, hop-off bus, or you can take public transport, and it is very easy to get around. Of course, you're going to find all this out when you have done your research. But there are some things that you're going to want to ask and some things you're going to want to know before you book your private excursion. So you're going to want to know what happens if your cruise ship doesn't make it into the cruise port. That happens. Sometimes there are itinerary changes, there are bad weather situations, and the cruise ship doesn't make it into the cruise port. So firstly, how do you pay? Have you paid in advance? Do you book with a deposit only? I would suggest booking an excursion where you're only booking with a small deposit rather than paying in advance. You'll also want to know where you're meeting your tour guide or your excursion leader. Sometimes it's right at the cruise port, but other times it might be across the street. So you'll want to have that information. And it's a good idea to have a contact number, like a phone number. Now, what I usually do, if I get that information in an email or if it's on the website, is I screenshot it. So if I don't have Wi-Fi, if I don't have internet that is available when I get off the cruise ship, at least I have that picture. So that's just a little tip for you. You'll also want to know what time you need to be at your meeting place. And what I mean by this is, are they on ship's time or island time? Most of the time, they'll actually be using their own time, so the island time. But on your cruise ship, you may use ship time, and that might actually be an hour or 2 hours difference from the time in the island. So you'll want to find out that information before your time to meet up. Now, another tip is to actually take a port guide off the cruise ship with you. Even if you're private or with the cruise line excursion, it is always something good. Now, the cruise ship will have these available. In the past, they had them printed out on paper. Now, I don't know if you'll have this available on your app as well. If you do, I would screenshot it as well. You'll have the information, like, for instance, some shopping information, an overview about the cruise port, a map, things like that. But what you'll also have, which potentially could be very important, and I will maybe screenshot it after, is you'll have the port agent for the cruise line. So just in case, if you have a problem getting back, if you are in any situation where you need to get in touch with the cruise ship, that is the phone number. So make sure to have that with you. Now, I mentioned that a few years ago, I had a problem on a private excursion. Now, we did get back to the cruise ship in time, so that was not the issue. But after that, I did know that there are some questions to ask and sometimes maybe not to book a private excursion. In this case, it was in Grand Cayman. And what happened was Well, it was a Stingray excursion. We were 4 people. I was with my children, and there was a fair difference in price. It was much cheaper to book with this private excursion. So we did that. But that morning, it was looking gray and looking like it might get stormy. And we met up with the excursion, and we actually went out on the water. Soon after we were out on the water, it started to get extremely gray, and we saw lightning from far away and some thunder. And when I had asked about that, if we were going to head back, they kind of laughed, and I had asked about where the life jackets were, and they were kind of laughing. It was sort of a party atmosphere, and I was really uncomfortable. I had my children with me. It was not the kind of excursion that I would have wanted to be on. Honestly, we ended up, 2 of us didn't even get off the boat because it really was, the water was getting rough, and I was just so thankful to be back on land after this excursion. Well, when we came back to the cruise ship, we ended up finding out that all of the excursions that were booked with the cruise line were actually canceled that day. But ours, we were on a shore excursion that was private, and I guess they wanted to make sure that they did have the money from that excursion, so they kept going. And I felt that at that point, I realized that sometimes maybe when you're booking with a private excursion, sometimes maybe safety is sometimes a little bit cut, and that really just didn't make me feel good. Now, that's just a little cautionary tale. I've actually booked several private excursions since then, but I am pretty careful when I'm on the water, when there is a ferry involved, when there's a train involved, and when something is far away. And I always do my research as well, and I ask a few questions before I book. Now, I'd love to know your tips. Do you book private excursions? Do you book with the cruise line? Do you go off on your own? Please let me know your tips in the comments below. I know it helps cruisers so much. Now, I'm going to leave a video right after this one, and it's all about what to pack for a cruise. So if you are going on a cruise, make sure to watch that next. Now, I hope that you did enjoy this video. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. I really appreciate it. And of course, please subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now. Happy cruising.